Welcome everyone to MS Talks. This is Mohammed Shafeek, and I often say this that I don't read much books, but I read people. I learn from people. So we are blessed to have today with me Mr. Satya, very veteran, experienced person, a lawyer, economist, a game changer, a Secretary-General of Global Alliance for a Sustainable Planet. So, sir, if it would be a bit injustice if I introduce yourself because you have a lot, you have done a lot in your career, spanning across 40 plus years. So, could you just give some highlights about your career?
Well, I'm delighted to be having this conversation with you for one reason that young people are literally the hope for the planet because this whole conversation about climate change has been going on for more than 3 decades now, and long before that, but in terms of the Rio Conventions, 3 decades now, and we haven't produced the results that people want us to. So the intergovernmental negotiations have been slow, mind-numbing, some would say, and unproductive. But what is happening on the sidelines is far more exciting. Young people coming together and really making a difference.
Okay.
And so, through you, I want to tell your audience this is not about me. I
Right.
might have a few words of wisdom to share, but it is about them
Interesting. Yeah.
and what they are going to do about the climate challenge, what they are already doing, and how that will impact the planet moving forward. I think that's what is what excites me because people like me, no matter how exciting a career we have had, it is at a different time, from a different place.
Right.
What is happening right now is a very different world. It's digitally connected. Information is democratically available. In my
Right.
time, I would read a book to find any information. Now you have it right at your fingertips.
Right.
Whether you are rich or poor doesn't matter. Even if you have a $100 smartphone,
Correct.
you can actually get all the information you need. Now, what you need to do, what you want to do with that information, of course, the analysis, you might ask some person with a little experience to interpret the information for you. But the information in itself is already available
Yeah.
across the planet. So that's, I think, what is extraordinary. And that's why we should celebrate young people, the ideas they bring to the table, and the leadership. And most importantly, all this conversation is about whom, not about me. It's about the young people because that's the planet they will inherit. And that's why it is extraordinary as to what young people are doing, what they're capable of. And we need to, just yesterday, we hosted the Climate Youth Negotiators program that actually has more than 200 young people that have been carefully selected and have been inserted into the national negotiating teams to provide
Interesting.
the young people's perspective in every delegation. And they talk to each other, unlike many delegations who hardly talk to each other because they want something that the other is not willing to give. But here, everybody understands that it is a shared planet
Right.
and our goals have to be shared. Yes, we need to go back into the past and look at climate justice or a just transition. But the bottom line is when the house is on fire, we need to first put out the fire.
Correct. Makes sense. So, going through your profile, I just noticed two elements that is, people and planet, right? What incidents or experience led you to focus on these two elements? Or if I rephrase this question, why are you doing what you're doing now?
Very good question. Why I am doing what I am doing? The easier answer would be somebody has to do it. But that's not my answer. I'm doing it because I passionately believe that when good people come together, good things happen. It's very easy to blame others for inaction or inadequate action.
Right.
But then what were you doing yourself? I think, that's the question we need to ask ourselves, that if I have some experience, if I have some exposure, some knowledge, some wisdom to share, or something that I can use to make the world a better place, and I am not using it, it's shame on me, nobody else. Blaming others is very easy. But when you have the ability to do something, then you must do something.
Right. Right. Okay. For my audience, those who are not much aware of COP, um, could you please elaborate on what is the relevance of such platforms where we discuss many pressing challenges and issues? What is the relevance? And there is one criticism which often associate with such platforms, including COP, is that it's more dialogue or talks rather than action. So, how is this such platforms relevant at this time?
Very relevant. So the world has hundreds of treaties. So if you look at the multilateral treaties, they are in the hundreds, uh, not in the thousands, in the hundreds. But bilateral treaties are in the thousands. Treaties between countries or country groupings. Um, Now
You're
every time,
talking about what kind of treaties? Is it
every
okay?
every time there's countries come together to discuss a common problem, it may or may not end up with a convention, but if it does, it's in legal international law, it's called treaties. Let me explain it in a different way. When we are within the national boundaries of a country or its jurisdiction, there are national laws that guide our behavior. Internationally, but there are issues that affect more than one countries or
Right.
many countries
Right.
or even continents. So for that you have international law,
Right.
and international law expresses itself through treaties.
Right.
And then, of course, once that is signed and ratified, then countries take it back, and depending on their own national legal framework, like in some countries, they say that once you've signed a treaty, then it automatically has the powers of national law
Right.
within their country. But in many cases, they say even if you sign something, you should still bring it back and make a national law that mirrors the international convention. So that's how it happens. And so every convention that is negotiated, there is a zero draft, and then countries come together through their representatives.
Okay.
That's why it's called Conference of Parties.
All right.
COP.
Right.
So every treaty you can go back to treaties like the International Convention on Civil and Political Rights, ICCPR,
Right.
or the Convention on Economic and Social Rights, or Child Rights Convention. There are numerous of those. All of them have had COPs,
Right.
which is simply put, the people that are expected to sign the treaty would like to negotiate what they want to see in the treaty.
Right.
So that's what happens, and then at some point of time they agree on everything,
Okay.
and then there's a final draft that then gets signed. And of course, the process of signing is that every treaty has a number of countries. The conditions are already there. So some treaties might say, as soon as 40 countries sign, then this will come into force.
First, yeah.
And then after that, you can't sign, but you can accede, because then the treaty is already in force.
Right.
Then you can only accede. And then, of course, once they sign, then they take it back to their countries, and then they ratify it through the parliamentary processes or administrative processes as defined in law. Different countries have different processes. So that's why COPs are very important. What we are
Okay.
talking about, climate change, there are things that civil society organizations can do, there are things that people can do, there are things that corporates can do. But unless there is national regulations and laws that come from a country signing up for a climate treaty, it becomes very difficult for a corporate even to take meaningful action. So let's say you own a company and you want to spend a lot of money on ESG.
Right.
Your shareholders might ask, why are you spending this? There is no need for it.
Right.
But if there was a regulation that
Which
says
mandates.
these are the standards you need to follow,
Right.
then you have to do it. Then your shareholders are not asking you that question anymore. And so that's what we're seeing in a lot of countries where there's a lot of resistance to ESG.
Right.
And especially in many states in the US, you see that. And that's primarily because there's no law. So if you don't have to follow it, you're doing it, then your shareholders tell you that's something extra. Why are you spending our money on that?
All right.
But if there's a requirement set by law that anybody that is doing business within this state or this country has to follow these regulations or these laws, you have to do it. Then your shareholders are not questioning you as the CEO. Why are you spending our money on things that are not supposed to be done?
All right. So, do you think that this COP28 is different from any the previous episodes, especially in terms of action? Because wherever you see that it speaks about actions, and there is a $30 billion fund committed by the president of UAE, His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan. There is another announcement that there is a global center established for climate finance. So there are many key announcements. So how do you see this, and what is the relevance of UAE or this region hosting COP28?
Well, I think four things that really stand out for this COP. First is that this is a COP with the largest registered delegates in the history of the UNFCCC COPs. Last time I checked, there were more than 90,000 people had registered.
Yeah. Just for the blue zone. Yeah.
Just for the blue zone.
Yeah.
Because others don't have to register.
Green. Yeah.
That's extraordinary.
Right.
Normally it's anywhere between 30 to 50,000, like what we have seen in the past. And this is extraordinary. It's almost double
Right.
as compared to the past. So what it tells you is that yes, it speaks to the organizing ability of the UAE
Right.
in giving people that confidence, and also the fact that there is ease of access.
Right.
UAE has always been a very welcoming country. It is well known. It's a transportation hub, literally for the world.
Yeah.
So that helps a lot of people to come and attend. So that's the first part, right?
Right.
The second part is that people are anxious. People want to know what is happening. People want to play a part. So the larger number also speaks to that. More and more people are worried. They want climate action. So they are thinking, maybe I should go and I can do something that really is meaningful, So I think it's both. So that's the first thing I observe. The second thing is that I see a lot of people really overwhelmed by the challenge, because the new scientific data that is coming out on 1.5 degrees
Right.
global warming,
Right.
we actually breached 2 degrees global warming. I think the numbers were 2.06.
Yes.
2 weeks ago. Now, is that a steady state of global warming? No, of course not. But when you see these spikes, what are spikes initially in physics, they become steady state when they keep happening repeatedly. That's a very dangerous place to be, especially for a country like, even like UAE. I talk to a lot of cab drivers, a lot of people when I go to markets, because as you rightly pointed out, you meet people, so do I, And so best way to find information is talk to people.
Right.
And when you talk to them, they say, we've never seen this hotter summer in December, this hotter weather in December.
Okay.
And then that's actually worrying, but also validating the fact that global warming is going to do much worse damage to countries that are surviving at the threshold of warming already, especially countries in the Middle East, countries in the other dry land areas of the world. That's a big challenge, So that's that. A lot of people are overwhelmed by the challenge. But the third thing, I also see that a lot of people have hope. That we will innovate.
Right.
We'll imagine a different world, and we will, so this is outside the negotiations. The civil society, the private sector, all of them coming together.
Right.
And that's what you see. You go to these pavilions, whether in the green zone and the blue zone, it's extraordinary. The kind of bonhomie, the fraternal conversations that you see, and also the kind of actions that we are seeing and talking about. That's the fourth thing.
Right.
You mentioned about the 30 billion fund.
Right.
I was actually when it was there, when it was announced by His Excellency the President of UAE and the COP28 President,
Dr. Sultan Al Jaber.
Excellency Mr. Al Jaber, and there are multiple announcements. The UAE Food Declaration, for the first time, there's a food systems declaration,
Right.
and so there's a lot of good information coming out, and I'm very hopeful that these things will move the needle.
Okay.
Let me talk to you a little bit about the loss and damage fund, which was launched in Glasgow. And at that time, so we signed a partnership agreement with Federated Hermes, which is a $715 billion asset manager. So they are our new partner at GASP to work together and produce the kind of investments into Mother Nature, bringing back nature while healing the ecosystems and getting prosperity at the bottom of the pyramid for people that matter, that farmers and others. And the Scottish First Minister was here, His Excellency Hamza Yousaf. And he said, and I'm only, maybe not exact words, I'm paraphrasing. He said 2 years ago when the Loss and Damage Fund was launched in Glasgow, and Scotland was the first to give £2 million. A lot of people said, oh, this is small money. But 24 months later, the fund is $500 million.
Right.
And so he said that virtue signaling, that being the first to contribute, has meaning. And so he was when we were doing our partnership announcement with Federated Hermes, he was here. And he said, I see that happening with this, For some it might be just a partnership announcement, but for me, it's a partnership pregnant with possibilities.
Wow.
With someone who can really bring a diverse set of stakeholders together, which is the Global Alliance for a Sustainable Planet, and for someone who already manages money at a grand scale, $715 billion. So we need two sets of expertise, building partnerships,
All right.
and someone who has the rigor and the discipline to deploy money and make sure the investment is done rightly and the returns are right, and then so everybody wins. So it is not that there is not enough money to deploy for the right causes. It is that the people with the money are here, the people with the right causes are here.
You're looking at the wrong place.
Exactly. So you need to bring together both these set of actors
Right.
and manage that risk more effectively so that they become investable. So that's what we
Makes
do.
sense.
And
Okay.
then they will then bring in their army of investors and portfolios and everything and bring this information to them and say, okay, here is a great idea.
Okay.
Let's see how we can work together. So that's why I said when I was speaking, I said no tall promises, only that we will non-stop keep doing this
Right.
until the results are achieved. And so there's a lot happening, both from the presidency, the
Okay.
host country, but a lot of other countries are also coming and joining them. And UAE is a country that was built on ambition.
Absolutely. Yes.
Without that, I mean, how many examples can I give you of countries that were in the same place as UAE a few decades ago,
Yeah.
and where they are and when UAE is?
Right.
So it's extraordinary what they have achieved.
Right.
So ambition comes naturally to them, and they have the resources. So if they deploy the resources on the right causes, which they already are, if you look at Mazda and EDGM
Right.
and others, Even Mubadala has a lot of sustainability focused investments.
Right.
So it's the perfect combination of ambition and resources and motivation which they have as the presidency of COP. They just started. The presidency will go on for a year,
Correct.
because that's how it works. So and so they have hosted a very successful COP, and they will drive action until the new presidency takes over.
Right.
So that's why I'm very hopeful.
Yep.
I'm delighted as to what I see. Um, it is overwhelming to some people, and I understand
Yeah.
why they feel that way. It is hopeful to some people, and I understand why they feel that way. Uh, but from our perspective, I feel that we have gotten a new momentum. And
Lovely.
that momentum should take us to the next level and
Actionable
the next
item.
and the next in all following COPs until you get to a point where we say we don't need these COPs anymore because we've gotten to where
Interesting.
we've gotten.
Um, Again, my thought is that yes, COP28 has set a new benchmark even for the future.
Certainly has.
Since you have touched on the money side, the fund side, I recall a statement, observation made by you in one of your previous interview that money has lost its purpose, right? So I just want to know why you made such a profound observation. What led you to make that observation? Because I also know that you're an advocate of private finance than the development fund. So, your thoughts?
Well, you see, when banking started a few hundred years ago, it started with purpose. Small communities are coming up all across the landscape in different parts of the world, um, and uh, and so people wanted to feel safe where to keep their money because if you kept it home, it could be stolen, it could be robbed. And then, as you came together as a community, you need community assets like a
Right.
water supply system,
Right.
like roads, um, like and when you did that, you needed money, and not everywhere was a country with a lot of resources. Right?
Correct.
So banking actually started with, and so that's how it started with community banks. So banking actually started with a purpose,
Correct.
and the
I agree.
purpose was the community.
Right.
Then they started growing, and they grew very big. So then the purpose of a bank is to make money. That can't be the purpose. It has to be people and planet, because without people and planet, there's no purpose for anything to exist. Especially in terms of talking about
Correct.
banking. Right?
Right.
Animals don't do banking with us.
True.
It's people. So that's why. So when I say money has lost its purpose, money is what money does.
Right.
Money is capable of great good and greater evil.
Right. I agree.
So that's what I feel, that money needs to find back its purpose. The moment it does, then we will stop doing what classic um, environmental activists say: private profits, public losses.
Oh, yeah.
So you have a mine. Somebody took the mine, took everything out, and left it as it is, completely damaged earth. The water systems, water tables, toxicity levels go up. The air pollution is killing people. But somebody made money. But then who fixes the problem? It's people,
Right.
and the government that represents the people. So we have to look at externalities, and that's extremely important. Without externalities, we don't understand what it is. We love cheese. Let me give you an example. There are some kinds of cheese that actually need 6,000 liters of water to produce 1 kilo of cheese. How does that help the planet?
Right.
But should the suggestion be that let's stop eating cheese? No.
No, correct. Yeah.
Let's do it more efficiently.
Right.
Let's find
Makes
other
sense.
ways of producing the same thing, and there is now. I talked about young people in the beginning. Technology, the kind of technology that is being invented by young people, has extraordinary ability to actually bring about efficiency, both in terms of economic returns, but also in terms of the natural resource that is used to produce those goods and services. So that's, I think, why it is crucial.
Yeah, I was about to ask the question on the role of technology, but you answered that as well in this question. Um, Let me touch upon one key element, I think, which is missing throughout our discussion now is on the poverty. On based on the Sustainable Development Goals, again issued by United Nations, there are three elements which I would say it's if I summarize that's poverty, people, and planet. Obviously, we covered the last two during our discussion. Now, my question is based on your experience, where are we in terms of achieving these goals by 2030?
Well, there
Is
was
there a lot
just
to
a
do? Yeah,
review
yeah,
at the UN headquarters during the UN General Assembly annual UN G8,
right,
which was in September this year. And the analysis tells us that we are only on track to achieving 12% of the goals, 12% of the targets in the goals, which is nothing. But
correct,
of course, it's a midpoint because this started on the 1st of January 2016, so we are at the midpoint. We still have a little more than 7 years left. So uh, I'm hoping that the situation will change because there is no climate resilience without achieving the SDGs,
correct.
and there's no achieving the SDGs without
The
dealing with the climate
climate,
change
correct,
challenge, because that will wipe out all the SDG gains.
correct,
So you can build a lot of um, infrastructure and facilities, but if they are not resilient, you have one hurricane or one cyclone,
right,
um, suddenly everything is wiped out. So that's the message that we need to draw from this whole process is that we can achieve the SDGs, but we have to focus on both, not just one. So we have to focus on both SDGs
right.
and climate action because there's no succeeding in one without the other.
Correct. Absolutely. I agree that. One more question on UAE. As you said, it's a logistic hub. Almost 80% of the world is 8 hours a flight away. It's a logistic hub. It's a finance hub. It's also a knowledge-based economy, and you see in most of the countries, underdeveloped countries, even developing countries, there's a huge resource constraints. Um, so, what how how do you think that UAE can play a role in the capacity building to address this resource gap?
Well, the UAE has a lot of foundations and philanthropic activities happening for countries in the region that they support, many that I am aware of, and that's the right thing to do because the poor do not need charity, they need dignity. And dignity comes through knowledge because the more people know about things, the better decisions they can make for themselves as to what is right for them
Right,
and what is wrong. So I think in that the UAE is playing a very good role.
right,
And I myself had the opportunity of going to some schools and meet with the students. And I went to the GEMS New Millennium School, and I was super impressed with uh, the thinking of the students and the quality of the infrastructure and the kind of teachers I interacted with and the principal herself. It's extraordinary, and that school has, I was told, 2,500 students, but in that school system, their biggest school has 10,000 students.
right,
So I think there's a lot to learn from here, in terms of uh, how imaginative children are in these schools
okay,
and how they are doing things to drive sustainability. I had a chance to interact with a few students that are really doing meaningful sustainability focused actions within the school or within the communities where they live. So it's extraordinary.
right. So just one question, probably it's not related to COP or climate, but for my audience, what are the three lessons which you wanted to pass on to my audience? It can be personal, it can be professional, but what did you learn from your life?
I think it's very important to read because uh, if you don't read, and reading is not a book, I'm not talking about a book, it could be an audio book, you're listening, you're reading, or you read anything, information is power. So if you don't have information, you don't have power. And let me explain. People talk a lot about connecting the dots.
Right.
They
Yeah.
say, oh, he's very smart, he connects the
Correct.
dots. I don't think you need to connect the dots. You should. I'm not saying that's a bad idea. But you have to first collect the dots.
Oh, lovely.
If you,
Nice.
if you don't have any dots, there's nothing to connect.
True.
And the
True.
dots are bits and pieces of information,
Right.
which comes from reading, which comes from as you're reading something. Let us say you're reading a story where somebody is showing an act of kindness to somebody. That thing goes and registers itself somewhere in your mind. And when you have all these dots, they connect themselves, like the Milky Way galaxy.
Yeah.
There's a lot of dots like stars in the sky, but together they make a wonderful universe.
Right.
So you need to collect the dots, they will connect themselves. In the absence of dots,
Very
you can't
profound.
connect anything.
Profound
That's the first
observation. Yeah.
Second thing,
No, before getting to that, I just want to. I always say to my team that you have to connect the dots. For that, you have to think. So, how does that complement? Is reading, of course, and
well, I mean,
if you can,
you will think
well, if you read,
only if you know.
right,
So there's this saying that the mind, the eyes do not see that what the mind does not know.
right, absolutely,
And then
absolutely,
some people define luck as where opportunity meets
preparedness.
preparation.
Yeah, yeah,
So if you're not prepared, you won't see the opportunity.
correct. I agree.
So
Yeah,
you're not lucky then.
correct.
You
Yeah,
can call yourself whatever, but you're not lucky because the opportunity just walked across. And I see that a lot when I'm in these conferences and conventions. A lot of young people come up to me and have a question and then they follow up. Some of them just have a question and then they take all the information from me to connect later on, but they never do. But many do and start a conversation.
right,
And that leads to something. So
right,
it's not just about interest at the flash of a moment, but it's also sustaining that interest over a period of time. We spend a lot of time thinking about what's happening in the grand scheme of things in the longer term, but what actually matters is what you do in the short term. And that's what brings me to the second thing that I want to say is that when you have an opportunity, any opportunity that comes across to you in your life, make the best of that opportunity. Don't spend too much time thinking about some grand plan which may never happen. What is happening right now is the opportunity you have in your hands. And if you do the best with that opportunity, that will lead you to your next, and your next, and your next. And maybe 20 years later, as you look back, you will be a very happy person.
So, seize the opportunity as it comes.
Yeah, as they come.
Okay.
Sometimes you create those opportunities, sometimes the opportunities present themselves because you are prepared. And lastly, no knowledge happens with arrogance. All knowledge comes to you with humility. So when you are humble, you want to learn. You think you know something, but you need to learn more. And people that help others with problem solving, they say all problem solving starts with one thing: acknowledging there is a problem.
Right.
So if you don't acknowledge there is a problem, there's no problem to solve.
Correct.
So, but that happens when you are humble. So that's what it takes to acknowledge that you have a problem. So, oh, I have no problem, I'm all right.
Right.
And then you keep making the same mistakes that has potentially significant impact on both the individual and the community and the society. So humility, is extremely important.
Right. Thank you. Thank you so much on that. And one final question. Probably it's a bit creative question. Maybe it's a strange question. So, is there any thought or idea which is popping up your mind all the time or recently, which motivates you or kind of you're a bit concerned, you wanted to put that into action. So what is that thought, which can be very raw thought,
Simple.
maybe
What
polished
can
thought?
I do better? What can
Lovely.
I do better?
Okay.
Do a post-mortem at the end of the day.
So you
Did
do
I
that
use
every
my,
day.
because people talk about money being very important and
Right.
wealth being important. No.
Wow.
What we all have in finite numbers, it's time. Life is made of time units.
Absolutely. I
What you
agree.
do with that time decides everything.
Absolutely.
So, my question to myself is, what can I do better?
Lovely. Thank you so much, sir. That's a
Thank you.
profound observation and a thought. We end this interview, and I really wanted to thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.